I have a co-host today. Stay right there. She really wants to be on my lap right now, but that's not going to work. So she'll sit next to me and be annoying while we do the show. Because that's what cats do. Good morning, everybody, and welcome. Today is Monday, May 4th, Star Wars Day 2020. My name's Jeremy, and this is my first cup of coffee. So I learned a new trick. I don't know, trick's not the right word. I learned a new thing about coffee over the weekend. It just suddenly showed up in my Google News feed. Adding a little bit of salt. Not like a lot of salt, but like a tiny pinch of salt. I think they're suggesting something like a quarter teaspoon to a pot, to like an 8-cup pot. So I'm putting in like a dash, and it is game changing. It's amazing. It counteracts the bitterness. Doesn't matter how you make coffee, there's always a little bit of bitterness. And so just a tiny little bit of salt in, when you brew it with the grounds, boom, rounds out the flavor. It is phenomenal. And I wish I'd known this years ago. Well, I don't know about you, I had a wonderful weekend. The weather here in Vermont was about as close to perfect as you get. Let's see, Friday, I just kind of came home and chilled out. Saturday, went for a walk, did some stuff in the yard, messed around with plants. Some stuff's getting bigger, has to be repotted, so some things have graduated up. Yesterday, more work in the yard, built a fire pit, something I've wanted for a long time. A friend of mine came over, helped me with that and some of the other work. Grilled some veggie burgers for dinner. It was a good day. It was a really good day. Weather was great. Had, I think, 3 or 4 windows open yesterday. There's always something nice about being able to open all the windows and just letting the air come in and the staleness of winter leaving. It feels good, right? I mean, I think it's pretty natural. Even if we're inside, we want that outside air. Assuming you live somewhere where you want the outside air, as I do. I'm pretty lucky. Oh, and there's a woodchuck that moved into an old hole in my backyard, and we're becoming friends. We'll just put it that way. Fortunately, I don't garden anywhere in the backyard. I've considered it, but being that the backyard is the easy place for the deer and the woodchucks and the moose and the neighbors' dogs and everything else hasn't been high on the list. So that guy's hanging out back there, and yeah, what else? What else did we do this weekend? I pulled the taps out of the birch trees. That's done. I got some greens starting to grow in one of the front gardens. Productive weekend. Happy weekend. Slept in plenty. Started watching Silicon Valley. I don't know if anybody's seen that show, but it's on Hulu right now. And reminds me a lot of what I have gone through as a business owner over the years. Pretty crazy stuff. Now, what's going on today? Today is client stuff, and it's the first Monday of the month, so there's some reporting that I do for clients and all the normal whistlekick stuff. Tomorrow is whistlekick live. Tomorrow night at 8 p.m. Eastern, so don't forget that on Facebook. And yeah, let's see what you guys wrote in. See what kind of questions and comments we got to talk about. Oh, my robe's opening. Can't let anyone see the hair on my chest. Today we've got questions and comments from Gabe and Frank. Thank you both. May is... Let's see if I can get my words right. May is Asian American Month. To celebrate, we look at 2 quotes from one prominent Asian American, Eric K. Shinseki, war hero and Army Chief of Staff. If you don't like change, you're going to like irrelevance even less. Change is important, and I find it so fascinating that so many people are afraid of change because you can't have progress or growth without change. If things stay the same, they by definition can't get better. And the thing I find ironic is the people that fear change are quite often the people who complain the most about their current situation. Now, it doesn't mean that you just randomly change things and throw everything up in the air and see if it happens to land better than it did the first time. But we need to embrace change. Change is, as some have said, the only constant. And when you recognize that change carries with it so much potential, so much opportunity, I love change. I am excited for change. Do I want everything to change at once? No. There's a certain amount of change that I think any of us can handle at any given moment. But I'm okay with change. I'm okay with having things shaken up. Even if they're shakeups that I'm not looking forward to or I didn't initiate, I do my best to find the potential. And I think if you get in the habit of focusing on the good things and looking for the positive, change becomes that much easier. Most of us are still facing quarantine and a major shift in what normal life looks like. But there are positives. I'm getting a lot more sleep. I'm spending more time cooking and enjoying that. I'm enjoying spending more time at home and working in the yard. Now, would I rather be off doing other things and having options and spending time with friends and going to martial arts competitions? Yes. But it doesn't mean that because I don't have the things that I want that I'm not going to look for the positive in what I have. Focus on the positive, try to be grateful, because remember, there are people all over the world who would literally kill to have the life that you have now. I think honoring where we are in life is pretty powerful and pretty important. And of course, as the quote says, if you don't like change, you're going to like irrelevance even less, because if you don't change, you're left behind. The world moves on. I think that's a line from the Dark Tower series by Stephen King. The world moved on. Great books. Second quote from Chief of Staff Shinseki. I'm assuming I'm saying this name right. I might be off. You must love those you lead before you can be an effective leader. You can certainly command without that sense of commitment, but you cannot lead without it. And without leadership, command is a hollow experience. Oh, excuse me. A vacuum often filled with mistrust and arrogance. And unfortunately, this applies in martial arts. If you've been around a while, you've probably trained under, or at least with or around, someone who really didn't love teaching. They didn't love their students. Oh, hold on. Cat. There you go. She likes to be under her blanket. So I have to tuck her in. Get in there. Get in there. She's trying to dig. Like that's going to do anything other than claw up the couch. Stop it. Okay. Oh, good morning, Nish. We'll get to that in a moment. Going back to what I was saying. If you think about those martial arts instructors or teachers or school owners or just the people you've trained with who don't love teaching, who don't love their students, there's something missing. There's something that just doesn't quite translate. It's a transactional relationship. They don't have the impact on their students that they could, and they don't have the impact on themselves that they could. A really good martial arts school where the instructor or the owner or whatever loves the students and loves teaching gets so much back. If you're an instructor, if you have a school like that, you know what I'm talking about. What you give and what you get back are so out of balance. You get so much more back. And the irony is the students feel the same way. They feel like they're getting more than they're paying for, maybe even deserving. Cat's gonna fall off the couch. Hey, you're being a dork. Cat. Such good coffee. Put a little salt in your coffee, I'm telling you. So when we look at the martial arts schools that don't have that kind of attitude where the instructor doesn't love the students and love their job, they teach, they go home. They cancel classes at any opportunity. Their tests involve belt fees, well, no, because that's the only justification they can find in themselves for spending more time with their students. Oh, well, I might as well go do this, I'll make more money. Now, that doesn't mean that there's something wrong with belt fees, but I think you know the vibe that I'm going for here. It's unfortunately, there are people I know, people I can think of who this is how they teach. And what's sad is most school owners who are in that place don't start off there. They end up there because they felt like they deserved something. They forgot that they were leaders and they had to set the tone. And because students didn't show up or whatever. Excuse me. This is how you know it's spring. The instructor becomes bitter and resentful. It's really a shame. Leadership. To lead means to go first. You have to set the example. You have to be, if you want your students to be better at forms, you have to demonstrate your willingness to get better at forms. If you want them to spend more time on conditioning, you have to spend time on conditioning. You can't sit on the sidelines and expect them to work hard and you don't do anything. That's command, that's not leadership. When I teach, I'm out there with everybody. I try to set an example. Good instructors do. Nish wrote in a question. Good morning, Jeremy. On the topic of change, what changes do you think we will see in classes or tournaments when things first open back up? I think that depends a lot on where you are. I know that there are some schools that are very quietly teaching a small number of students, like their high ranks, they're meeting, 2 or 3 at a time or something. I think you're going to see, well, let's break that up. Tournaments. I think we're already seeing competitions that are being canceled for 2020 because the schedule has gotten so packed. I think a lot of tournaments will be rescheduled. I think a lot of those tournaments will see poor attendance because people are scheduling into the summer, and most people are used to having the summers off. There's always opportunity, right? I think on the competition side, I think most people are just going to look at 2020 as a weird year, and they're going to do what they can to host their event, and they'll go back to normal for 2021. Classes, I think, are a different story. I think we're going to see a number of martial arts schools go out of business. I know we've already seen them. I've heard from people about schools getting closed, which is strange to me because for most schools, the major expense is the commercial lease. And if you, to my mind, most commercial landlords, Gabe says his tournament league was just canceled. Yeah, not surprised. unfortunately. Um, Most commercial landlords are going to look at, hey, do I defer or even let go of a month or two of rent for this tenant? Or do they go out of business and it takes me at least 90 days? If not, let's face it, professionally right now, there are not a lot of businesses that are going to be starting new commercial leases. Or do I go 3, 4, 6 months without any rent? So the idea that martial arts schools are going out of business is just weird to me. But there are exceptions to every rule. What I think is really going on, what I think we're seeing a lot. Stacy's bringing up virtual tournaments. Yes, and that's filler. I don't think we're going to see a lot of that moving forward. I think it's a stopgap. It's better than nothing, but the moment we can get out there in person with each other, I don't think virtual tournaments are going to succeed. Going back to schools, I think a lot of school owners who kind of fit the description I was giving earlier in response to Frank's quote, that they command, they're not leaders. I think a lot of those schools are saying, forget this. This isn't worth the stress, and they shut down, and they're blaming it on this. I think this is what they're doing. There are some schools that are thriving. There are some schools that are adding new students because they. Now, I'm not saying it was my idea to do this at all, but when you look at martial arts schools, some really put a lot of time in, and they added classes on. They have classes that people can take. They had live classes, pre-recorded classes. They had one-on-one sessions. They did a ton of great stuff. They found a way to step it up. Those schools provided this beacon of hope, this sense of normalcy and stability through these times. Those schools have not lost very many students. Some have even added students. You have other schools who, now this is not me criticizing. It's not me judging. Maybe it's criticizing. You had schools who needed to take a step back because everything that's going on is emotional. It's difficult. And they didn't have more to give. And that's okay. But unfortunately, those are the schools where people said, maybe I'm going to stop paying. Maybe the handful of class opportunities I have online isn't worth the money I'm paying right now. I think some of those schools are going to go out. I think some schools will have to rebuild. The only constant is change, right? I think it's going to polarize students into one of two camps. Either they're going to be really, really excited to start training again, or they're not going to train again. I think when you take a break from something, you really get to see how it fits into your life. Do you miss it or not? Right now, I miss training. I miss training with people. I miss kicking people and doing forums. I miss it all. I really do. And we got one more here. This one's from Gabe. Have you ever seen the martial arts help someone with something totally unrelated, like fear of heights? Yes. I have seen martial arts improve people's confidence. And from confidence, I've seen any number of things. I'm an example of that. If it wasn't for the foundation I had in martial arts, I wouldn't have been able to build the life that I have. And I don't mean, logistic. I mean mentally and emotionally. There are times that I fall back on martial arts as being the major pillar in my life. If I don't know what else to do, if I don't know who else I am a martial artist. And was it Friday or sometime later last week, we talked about Descartes and cogito ergo sum, right? I think I am, and that whole concept. To me, my life breaks down. It starts from being a martial artist. And if I can do that, if I can learn these skills, then what else can I do? So in the example of a fear of heights, what if you approached a fear of heights the same way you approach training? Get a ladder, get a step ladder, stand on that bottom rung. Why do we have a fear of heights? Because there's a lack of control there. I'm not a big fan of heights. I freely admit that. And yet when I went to the Grand Canyon, I made sure I looked over the edge. In fact, I did a lot more than look over the edge. I found it was away from where most people were. If you've ever been to the Grand Canyon, you know most people kind of congregate in that first couple hundred feet. I walked maybe half a mile out. This was in November of 2017, I think. And maybe 2016. Anyway, I saw this wonderful photo opportunity, this great op for a panorama, and I had my phone on me, of course. And I spent 10 minutes figuring out how to get down and then how to get back up from this spot. It was dicey. I didn't have any gear with me. And I knew that if I slipped, I was probably going in. But I did it. And I got some great shots. Because my desire to take that picture exceeded my desire to be afraid. And how often do we have that in martial arts? How many people are nervous or even terrified of testing or competing? And yet they want to test, they want to compete. Their desire overtakes or exceeds their fear. And sometimes we learn how to do that. I'm not a big fan of snakes. I don't know that I would say I'm afraid anymore, but I think most people would probably say I'm afraid. I don't use that word anymore with it because I know how far I've come. Last weekend, there was a snake on the threshold of my garage. The door was open. And I started to step into the garage and the snake was there. And I had a friend over and said, hey, can you grab a stick and move the snake? And they did. Now, I've seen a snake in that general location several times. It's my front door. Do I not use my front door? I open the door. I take a big step over the area where the snake might be. Then I turn and look. I find a way to work with the fear. I find a way to manage life. Martial arts gives us tools to manage life. Stacy says, I am terrified of heights. I rappelled down the tallest building in Burlington wearing my school logo, my belt, precisely because it gave me strength. That's amazing. That's super cool. I've done a little bit of rappelling. Yeah, it's scary. It's scary. If you are afraid of heights, there are a couple things if you want to try to work through that in a safe way. I would encourage the movie Free Solo, about a guy who climbs a really, really, really tall rock without equipment that when you look at it looks completely sheer. And then wingsuit videos. All the crazy people wearing the wingsuits and the GoPros on their head, flying. And some of them, they do tricks and they come close to things and holy crap. I'm not going out to pick up a snake anytime soon. But I know that I can handle living in a place with snakes. In part because I just bought another tube of snake repellent that actually works. So if you don't like snakes, get some of that. Now, if you're afraid of heights, there isn't any fear of height repellent that I'm aware of. Oh, I think I started to offer a suggestion of getting a step ladder. Stand on that bottom rung. We're afraid because we don't have control. You stand on that bottom rung, maybe a little bit every day until you're comfortable. And then maybe you go up to the second rung. That's what we would do if we approach this from a martial arts perspective. That's what we would do, right? You do a little bit every day until it gets easier, until it gets better. Does it mean you're going to be standing on the top of that step ladder someday? Not necessarily. It might take a really long time as you get up higher and higher to move between the rungs of that ladder, kind of like rank. But that's okay, because isn't it better to be better? You know, I'm sure for all of us, there's some height, some circumstance where we would be afraid of heights. There's no perfect, but doesn't mean you don't work at it. Right? Good stuff today. Good conversation, everyone. Thank you. All right, I'm gonna go get ready for my day. Have some, maybe another cup of coffee. Pack up, make some lunch, get out of here. If you want to ask me some questions, drop them below. Oh, it's Monday. There's an episode. We've got all the submissions for episode 500. We're working on that. Oh, yay. Mr. Richard Baitlick. That was a fun conversation. I'm glad we got to talk. Episode 500 is next week. Wow. Next Monday. Oh, I got to check in with Julia, see how that's going. I'm super pumped. Okay, episode 498. And then Thursday's episode is a review of where we've been in the last 5 years. It's been 5 years. 5 years of martial arts radio. All right. If you're new to the show, make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications so you can get notified of this, which we do every weekday morning, 6:30 a.m. Eastern, as well as martial arts radio and some of the other things that we do. If you have a question or a comment, drop it below. I'll answer it tomorrow. And I hope you have a great day. Take care, everybody. Peace.